And I know you've talked about this a little bit already, but let's say you're a contractor, you're going out to look at a job, and you've got these products in your tool belt. When would you generally recommend somebody pick one of these products over the other one? So when would somebody pick Black Bottle? When would somebody pick DuraClear? And when would somebody want to pick Masterline?
Yeah, so Black Bottle kind of stands on its own there in that it ambers, and it ambers heavily. And, you know, it's supposed to. Ironically, the number one complaint I get from people about it is, oh, man, it ambered really bad. I'm like, that's the whole reason to be for it.
Yeah.
So Black Bottle, if you want an ambering finish, if you want the oil look, that's when you use it. You know, hands down, that's the right one. Between the Masterline and the DuraClear, it's really going to be more of a price point and performance type of issue. So the Masterline performs very well, but the DuraClear does use a premium resin in it, and, you know, thus comes in at roughly double the price. So, or maybe 1.5 times the price, you know, depending on your market there. But it is significantly more expensive. So Masterline is going to be used in more of an entry level, people getting into water, and DuraClear is going to be used when it's more, when they're looking specifically for the best possible single component.
Well, welcome to Pro Shop Talk, everybody, here at the Masters Craft. I am Daniel. I'm our technical director, and this is our series where we get to interview some of our vendor partners about some of their products and just hear about some of the highlights, the products they have, and how to use them. So today we have Toby Merrill with Duraseal on the line with us. How are you doing, Toby?
I'm doing great, Daniel. Thanks. How are you doing?
Good, good. So for those of or for those of the people who are watching this that don't know, can you kind of just introduce yourself real quick and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So currently I'm the senior technical and training specialist for Duraseal. I've been with Duraseal for about 3.5 years now, and prior to that I was a contractor. Started in the industry in '95, worked for my brother Dave for about 8 years, and then I had my own company, Walk on Wood, for 14 years or so before making the switch to the manufacturing side.
Awesome. Great. So I'm guessing pretty much every contractor that's going to be watching this has heard of Duraseal, but most of them will probably have heard of Duraseal in terms of the stain lines. That's not what we're going to be talking about today. I think today we're going to be talking a little bit about some of your water-based finishes, correct?
Yeah, that's our stain is, of course, our best known product and has been around for a very long time. But yeah, we're not quite as well known in the water-based world, and so we were going to talk about our 3 single component water-based finishes today.
Great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what 3 of those are, and let's launch off into it.
So the 2 Duraseal products that we'll talk about are water-based polyurethane, which is commonly known as Black Bottle. It got that nickname just because it was the first finish around in a black bottle. So that name has stuck around for quite a while. And then the second is DuraClear Finish. The third product we'll talk about is actually not even a Duraseal branded product. It's a Masterline product, which we of course make. Some contractors don't know that, but Masterline does indeed fall under the Duraseal brand.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've got Black Bottle. I used to be in Dallas. That was a popular one in Dallas. And then we've got DuraClear, and then we've got Masterline water-based. So we've got 3 different water-based finishes. Which one do you want to start with? Let's
start with the Black Bottle.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the Black Bottle and kind of what sets it apart as a product and what you typically use it for, see a guy using it on.
Sure. So Black Bottle was specifically formulated for California when it lost oil in the South Coast area. That was, I believe, in 2008-ish, and we were ready to go with a replacement. So most areas that have lost the gallons or the 5s of oil have been able to maintain OMU with quarts. And so the South Coast area, which is, I believe, 5 or 6 counties in Southern California, they lost it altogether. It's an oil replacement product, and we typically see it where people want the oil look, but don't want to use actual OMU due to VOCs or restrictions or whatever the reasoning is, dry time too.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess it's meant to mimic an oil. Is there, like in terms of the look, once you put it down, is there really any appreciable difference between that and a typical oil poly that you guys want to put down?
There's still a slight difference. You know, we got as close as we could to an oil, and I don't think there's anything closer in the water-based world to an oil than what we have there.
Gotcha.
But it still isn't identical. You don't get quite the same build with a water-based as you do with a typical OMU. And it does lack a little bit of the richness that you can get with an OMU. You know, we got close, but it wasn't quite 100% of the oil look.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know one of the big things with that product that guys like in Dallas, especially in like a little bit more of a humid climate, is their the dry time, the ability to get back on it and do multiple coats a little bit faster than an oil product. So, okay, so that's the black bottle, and then tell us a little bit about the DuraClear.
So DuraClear would be our premium single component. It uses a really nice resin. It's fully clear. Any of our products that use the word clear in the name, obviously, are clear products. And so that's where it's going to shine, is when you don't want that ambering and when you want to use the best possible single component finish.
Okay, so give us some examples of when a guy would want a perfectly clear finish.
The times where it's important to be perfectly clear are generally on lighter colors, whites, grays, where ambering would really cause a negative reaction in the look. Generally on any darker stain or the brown stains, the ambering is okay or even wanted. But you get to whites, grays, very light browns, and the ambering can give a less than stellar look.
Gotcha. Okay. So I know a common question I get with from contractors. They'll say, "Hey, I'm doing a white or I'm doing whatever. I need a perfectly clear finish at all. Like, do you know anything that will have zero ambering at all?" So, does this product have absolutely no ambering, or is it just the most minimal amount you can get in a water base? Like, how would you address that to a contractor to tell them information to give to a homeowner?
To the best of my knowledge, it has absolutely zero ambering, and in conjunction with our DuraClear sealer, again, clear in the name, between those two, you get a 3-coat system that has no ambering at all. Okay,
good deal. And then how about the Masterline water base? I know that's kind of a newer product for you guys.
Yeah, Masterline has a similar age to me with Duraseal, about 3.5 or 4 years. So it kind of loops us back around to more of an entry-level water-based price-wise. What really makes it appealing is the price won't scare off somebody who's looking to make the transition from OMU to water-based. It's a nice, it's got a really nice price point where it's not as intimidating as, say, $100 or $120 gallon of 2-component is. It's a nice transition product to get them to try water-based. It's a really nice product. It's much similar to our Masterline oil. We put a lot more into the jug than what the price would, than you guess from the price. And so it's a product that'll go down very easily, look nice, and perform well.
Gotcha. Okay. So on these products, I guess all or individually, how do you recommend a guy prepare a floor for either all three or each one individually if they have their own specific features?
Yeah, prep would be similar as far as leading up to the coat for any of the three. If you're looking for a natural floor, we would of course recommend one of our water-based sealers under them.
Yep.
Our stain works just fine as a sealer, and the exception to that would be on a light colored white oak floor where tannins are a concern. We would still want to see you use a sealer there.
Gotcha. So even if you're using a stain, you'd want to see a sealer on a wood like white oak, European white oak, something that has high tannins in it.
Yeah, that's the safest bet. On a darker color, you're unlikely to see a tannin issue, but you still might. So with white oak, it's safest just to get in the habit of using a sealer every time.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, in terms of that sealer, you've talked about DuraClear, and obviously if you're going with DuraClear, it's probably because you want a clear finish. So you want to use your clear sealer, your clear water-based sealer. For the other ones, can you use either oil-based or water-based sealer? Or do you recommend one over the other, or?
You can use either oil-based sealer or either of our water-based sealers, because we have two under the other products, and even under the DuraClear. Generally, you wouldn't, because you're looking for that clear finish, like you said. But the oil-based finish, of course, gives you that nice amber tone, especially on a raw floor. And that in conjunction with the water-based polyurethane would yield a very nice floor. But oftentimes where the water-based polyurethane is going to be getting used, you're not allowed to use the oil-based sealer. It kind of flips back to whether it's allowed in that area or not. But it is a great option to give you that nice amber tone and start you off with a nice thick build coat before going to your water-based finish coats.
Gotcha. Okay, so a guy's going to finish sanding, possibly staining, and then I assume just vacuum tack, and he's ready to start coating.
Yeah, standard NWFA operating procedure,
Okay. So then in terms of the coating of the products, I know guys have tons of different ways of coating. They've got T-bars, they've got pads, they've got brushes, they've got rollers, they've got smoothers, all different kinds of stuff. So
Sure.
what are the typical ways that you recommend guys coat? I guess what are all the ways that guys can coat these finishes, and then which way do you guys recommend officially, if any way?
Yeah, with all three, any of the coating techniques you mentioned will work fine. We generally see the best success with a T-bar or a pad on the water-based polyurethane and the DuraClear. Some of that has to do with regional habits of where they're popular at. For instance, I'm from Chicago area, and I didn't know a T-bar existed for the first 10 years of my career. That was only gym guys that used that, is what I thought. And then you go in other parts of the country, and they still don't know that rolling is a thing. So some of it has to do with the trends that we see on where it's popular at. But the water-based polyurethane and the DuraClear will both generally go down best with a T-bar. Although if you're adept at rolling, you know, there's no problem there either. The Masterline will go down really well any way you want to do it. And that, again, makes it appealing for somebody looking to make the switch from OMU to try something. It's a very user-friendly finish that'll go down easily and well.
Gotcha. Okay. So pretty much any way of coating. What's the coverage rate you're going to get? Is it the same for all three, or?
We always ask for 500 to 600 feet a gallon with any of our water-based clears.
Okay. So I know in a drier climate like Denver or, you know, I'm sure Arizona, Southwest, places like that, guys tend to get more like 400 if they're coating thicker, wanting it to level out. Is there any problem with that?
No, that works just fine. We have, you know, we've done lots of our floors in Denver area, and one of our account managers is based right there in Denver. But yeah, that's totally fine. The 500 to 600 is really a recommendation, and where we found it to perform best at an average, you know, so that's not in Denver and that's not in, you know, Orlando. That's at an average, you know, so normal temperature, humidity, and, you know, Denver's really never at a normal humidity. It's always dry there. So of course we're going to see some differences in how they apply it. And that's really one of the reasons why pad application is so popular in Denver. That was the way that the contractors there were able to make earlier versions of water-based work when they couldn't get them to roll or T-bar. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So a guy's going to seal, he's going to coat. Do you have any recommendations in terms of abrading? Like some guys will seal, abrade, coat, coat. Some guys will seal, coat, abrade, coat. Some guys will abrade in between either. So is there anything that you guys recommend in terms of that for any of the products?
With any water-based finish, if you're doing the coat within the hot coat window, which for our products is between 2 to 24 hours, and on the Masterline, it's 2 to 8 hours. Okay. It has a shorter hot coat window. There's no need from our end to abrade. Generally, we're doing it for aesthetic reasons, to make it feel smoother, to look better, but there's no performance gained from that. So what we're doing it to, you know, alleviate the debris that we ourselves left. Generally, guys are going to vacuum and tack, but, you know, we're, of course, dusty. Our skin comes off, hair, things, of course, fall in the finish. And as careful as we are, I've certainly never seen a perfect coat of finish, and that's in 25 years of doing floors. I know I've never done one. So abrading works well. I personally, I like to, if I stain the floor, I like to drive off the floor with like a maroon pad before I do my first coat. I knock down the grain rays from the water pop, and it helps the first coat go on that much smoother. Then I'll do any additional abrasion as needed. Generally, I like to put the sealer down if I'm doing a sealer, first coat, either way. And then the second coat, I will normally hot coat it as long as I don't see anything terrible in the first coat. And then I'll abrade the second coat and then apply my third.
Gotcha. Okay. So then after that, you're looking at a pretty standard dry time for a water-based finish. So you're looking at about the 2 hours plus or minus, depending on conditions.
Yeah, exactly. And the Masterline kind of uniquely takes just a touch longer to dry. It's still going to dry in about the 2 hour range, but when we say 2 hours, usually guys are like, that means 45 minutes. With the Masterline, it usually does mean closer to the 2 hours. And one additional note on the Masterline, it hardens up a little bit slower than what many are used to with other water-based finishes. And what we see is when people go back to do another coat the same day or even the next morning, when they go to abrade it, they'll think it's soft. And it may be slightly soft at that point compared to what they're used to. But it does develop significant hardness over the course of the next couple days.
Okay. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about cure time. What's the cure time, and when can somebody get back on the floor in socks versus moving back onto the floor with these products?
Yeah, it's always so hard from the contractor side to safely say, oh yeah, you can move back in X number of days, because no matter the cure time, carelessness will never be, nothing cures well enough for carelessness. You can't drag that piano across the floor in a day, a week, a month, or a year. Our floor finishes just can't withstand that. And really the wood itself can't withstand that. So I know I was always hesitant to when I would give those timelines. So with either of the Duraseal products, the next morning is absolutely fine for socks only. Even that evening, if you did the coat relatively early in the day, I always tell people try not to drag their feet. This isn't the time to slide around on your floor and see how smooth it is, like you're going to do for the next 10 years.
Right.
But yeah, if they really need to be back in the house with the Masterline, I like to see it, more like the next morning rather than that evening, just to give it a chance to harden up a little bit. Okay. As far as cure, all of them will cure out in 7 days. And as far as moving things back in, we like to see that 7 days before area rugs or furniture goes back in. And I know that can be hard. It's hard to tell people, hey, we're all done. Wait another week before you do anything. Oftentimes people move their furniture back in with felt pads before that 7 days. We can't officially recommend that. We realize that that's what's going to happen. But area rugs, you really want to keep off for some additional time, that full week.
Sure. Okay. Are these products cross-compatible in terms of coating one on top of the other, or how would you put systems together if guys want to cross finishes?
Yeah, absolutely. They're cross-compatible. They certainly can't be mixed together in liquid form like that. I get that call about once a week, like, hey, I have a half a gallon of this and a half a gallon of that. And it's always an emphatic, no, please don't do that. You'll be calling me back with more complaints.
Right.
But yeah, they can certainly be top coated over each other. A lot of people like to use the Masterline because it's more economical price points as a first coat or as build coats. And some will proceed with like the DuraClear single component or even our 2-component max after that as a better top coat. Gotcha.
Okay. Now, you can't mix the different types of finishes together. You could mix different sheens of the same finish together, though, I assume.
Yes. The asterisk on that is, well, this pertains more to our 2-component, but our flat, we don't recommend mixing with other sheens to create lower versions of those sheens.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Okay, so you could cross these one over the top of each other, and I assume the hot coat window applies depending on which finish you put down. So if you put down the Masterline, you're looking at 8 hours. If you put down the others, you're looking at 24 hours.
Actually, if you're changing finish, we never recommend hot coating. We would always recommend abrading for the added benefit of the mechanical adhesion in addition to the chemical adhesion. Finishes will generally adhere best to themselves. That's where you get the best chemical adhesion. And so anytime you're going to change finish, even within our line, we do recommend that you abrade it to give the added advantage of the mechanical adhesion.
Awesome. Good to know. Do these products work well for like screen and coat applications?
They can. It's often used, but in general, 2-component finishes are always going to have the best possible adhesion. And so in a situation where it's unknown what's on the floor, you'd of course want to test and find out as much as you can. But in the unknown scenario, a 2-component finish will offer the best chance for success. Mm-hmm. If it's a job that you yourself did or know specifically what finish was used, then proceeding with the same finish would always work, with the exception of contaminated cleaners that have been used on the floor. But that would be fine. But when you don't know exactly what was on the floor, 2-component finish gives you your best chance of success on a recoat.
Gotcha. Okay. And I know you've talked about this a little bit already, but let's say you're a contractor, you're going out to look at a job, and you've got these products in your tool belt. When would you generally recommend somebody pick one of these products over the other one? So when would somebody pick Black Bottle? When would somebody pick DuraClear, and when would somebody want to pick Masterline?
Yeah, so Black Bottle kind of stands on its own there in that it ambers, and it ambers heavily. And, it's supposed to. Ironically, the #1 complaint I get from people about it is, oh, man, it ambered really bad. I'm like, that's the whole reason to be for it. Yeah. So Black Bottle, if you want an ambering finish, if you want the oil look, that's when you use it. Hands down, that's the right one. Between the Masterline and the DuraClear, it's really going to be more of a price point and performance type of issue. So the Masterline performs very well, but the DuraClear does use a premium resin in it, and thus comes in at roughly double the price. So, or maybe 1.5 times the price, it'll depend on your market there. But it is significantly more expensive. So Masterline is going to be used in more of an entry level, people getting into water, and DuraClear is going to be used when it's more, when they're looking specifically for the best possible single component.
Gotcha. Okay. Are there any peculiarities with these that guys could easily miss, like you know, shaking it and not letting it sit, or not shaking it enough, or any interesting features that a guy who switches finishes might not catch if he's used to something else?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one would be the black bottle, the ambering. Again, that's what it's supposed to do, and somehow that gets missed by some, and you know, then they're surprised when it ambers. It'll also, if you leave drips or puddles, it'll let you know with a bright orange spot where you did it, you know, when it dries, because it's the thicker and it ambers so quickly. So I've seen where, and like an old industrial building where they T-barred a floor that had huge swales in the floor, and they left half-inch thick puddles of it, and it was a disaster because there was just so much finish left on the floor, and it basically all turned orange in those deep spots. But other than that, all our products can be shaken thoroughly. I always like to, I'd rather overshake than undershake. You
Sure.
always want to get things mixed up. You don't need to let it settle out for 20 minutes or anything like that. You know, just pour it in your tray or whatever you're working from and go.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's say a guy on the black bottle did leave a couple extra spots. What's his best way to repair that? Is he going to scrape it off? Is he going to touch it with a sander? What's he going to do?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what stage he's at. If it's on like a first coat, I would let hand sand it out even to raw wood and brush on a little more finish and let that dry. You know, I've done the vacuum blower trick or a hair dryer to get stuff to dry faster, you know, so I can proceed with the next coat. If it's on a final coat, I might try to razor blade the drip off. And, you know, so using a razor blade like a planer, I shave the top layer of that finish off, and you can usually peel it right off. That works for like hair and other debris in the finish too. I'm sure most floor guys have seen that trick. Some guys use like a nib file. That won't work as well in this scenario for a drip. You know, the razor blade will work better to shave it. But yeah, again, it depends on where you're at in the process. Earlier, I would just sand it out, even if it meant going back down to raw wood,
Gotcha.
and just recoat that little area.
Okay. Now, question I like to ask is, if a guy was going to screw this product up, because guys will find interesting, new, and creative ways to mess stuff up, myself included. And if a guy's out on a job and he was going to find the easiest ways to mess up any one of these products, what are the easiest pitfalls he can avoid with those?
Sure. I consider myself an expert on messing stuff up, so I'm pretty good at this. With the black bottle, the biggest mistake would be not using a sealer, and that's true on red and white oak. Okay. Applying it directly to wood, it can have a pretty vicious tannin reaction, and any stop marks are going to get that amber color. So that's where you're going to see that one get messed up, or just the unknowing, you know, it ambered, and you know, they didn't know that it was going to amber.
Sure.
With the Masterline water, the biggest thing I would see would be pushing too early to do the next coat, because it does dry just a little bit slower, and you just have to be a little more patient with it. That's where we tend to see the failures with that, or not following that shorter hot coat window, only 2 to 8 hours, and trying to do hot coats, you know, the next day or days later. You know, we've seen some issues there.
Gotcha.
With the DuraClear, usually it's just going to be rushing the application, rolling it too quickly, things like that, not putting it down thick enough to give it a chance to settle out.
Okay, awesome. Well, great, Toby. Is there anything else you want to highlight about the products?
I think we covered it for the most part. Yeah, all three are good products, and you know, we're of course always around to help back people up that want to try them. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Well, thanks for joining us on here, and thanks for giving us some info on this and how guys can be using these products and looking to add to their tool belt. So
you bet.
Right.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Appreciate it. We'll talk to you all later.